further coverage of America's ability to actually release competition in choice to so many outdated businesses. Again, the Free Choice Amendment held hostage in Senate Finance Committee. The crisis may be over, but the hostage, free choice for all of us, didn't survive. Senator Wyden's Free Choice Amendment finally taken up on what you could call day 8 of the markup. It happened at 1 o'clock in the morning today. It was an ugly fight, and just in case you don't know what's been happening with that amendment, here's a little background for you. Wyden's amendment would give all of us the option to buy our insurance from different companies. Those national exchanges that you've heard the president talk about, well, those are only for people who do not have employer-based health care. It had been slated for debate since last Wednesday. Each day, however, it was passed over, held hostage in a sense, giving its opponents time to fire against it, and boy, did they ever fire against it. God bless them. On Monday, it was a 1-2 punch from the unions and the American Benefits Council, a ABC lobbying group sending letters to senators encouraging them to vote down free choice. Of course, American Benefits Council makes their money preparing your health benefits for companies. So if there's choice and companies don't have health care anymore, well, they stop making money. So it hurts their profit center. Unions, they get more members if they negotiate better health care benefits. If everybody gets good health care benefits, unions lose their power, so they don't want us to have choice. Then Tuesday, the amendment facing another barrage of lobbying. This from the Business Roundtable and the ERISA Industry Committee. Those are the folks, of course, behind the exemption from any Sherman antitrust prosecutions in health insurance. Them in Major League Baseball, of course, have that lovely exemption, which means that we don't have to worry about any kind of business competition. Forget socialists. Sounds like communism to me. That lobbying group also sending out letters to senators telling them why they should vote down free choice. It's America. It's funny. Anyway, do you think the senators on the Finance Committee heard what they had to say? You bet. Here's Chairman Max Baucus last night.
I cannot think of a major amendment either that's so opposed by both business and labor. Both. And there must be some wisdom there if they're both opposed. And I just think you've done a lot, Senator, but I don't think this amendment really is the right thing to do.
And there is wisdom there, which is that as long as you send money to politicians, they will perpetuate your outdated business or outdated system, whether it's the union benefits or anything else, at the expense of everybody else, which is pretty wise. Anyway, so free choice killed before it came to a vote. Let's go to Mike Vaquera to find out more about exactly what happened in the middle of the night. Hello, Michael.
Hey, Dylan. Yeah, it was 1 o'clock. It was basically the last thing that committee did after this extended markup. I think they were in there for 8 or 9 days. They put it to the last. Ron Wyden behind the scenes had been negotiating with labor and some of the parties that you mentioned, try to make it more palatable to them. Obviously, this is a far watered down version of what Ron Wyden wanted to do to begin with Bob Bennett, the Republican from Utah. He simply says he wanted to give people a choice. If you were not eligible for the exchange, the so-called exchange, if you did receive employer-based benefits, then those employers would be required to offer you at least 2 choices and provide you with vouchers to get into the exchange, and had a number of other provisions. In the end, Wyden feels as though he got the rug pulled out from under him. Very upset. A lot of people feel that the White House and leadership had their fingers in this thing, certainly in other amendments that were disallowed over the course of the last week and a half. That's certainly what happened, according to several accounts. He feels as though he did get the rug pulled out from him on a technicality. Max Baucus said that the CBO had not completely scored the Wyden amendment, and therefore it was ruled out of order. There would have been an opportunity for the chairman to have been overruled on that, but the feeling was, particularly in the Wyden camp, is that they are protecting a lot of members from what would have been a very difficult vote. And so it was ruled out of order by the CBO. The Wyden camp says that's nonsense. The CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, had scored. This scored, of course, in other words, means they evaluated how much it would cost, how much it would save, and the various financial benefits and detriments that would go along with it. Baucus said it hadn't been scored. Wyden said that's ridiculous. It was scored 2 weeks ago. So on it goes. The next step now under consideration is whether Wyden should put it on the floor when it does come to the floor, this bill, sometime in mid-October. Dylan.
Yeah, not only that, but the CBO score was actually a savings. That, again, competition, I know it's totally nuts, but actually drives prices down. It's nuts. Anyway, former White House aide for President Clinton, Matt Miller, senior fellow at the Center for American Progress, specializing in economic healthcare policy, author of a tremendous book. I recommend you read it, The Tyranny of Bad Ideas, letting go of the old ways of thinking to unleash a new prosperity. Think about this at a time when our Congress is supporting, again, outdated financial systems with taxpayer money, outdated healthcare systems with special interest influence against all taxpayers as we watch watch the unemployment rate explode higher. You wonder why? Well, it's because our Congress refuses to update the outdated systems and adapt as capitalism would demand. The panel back with us as well, Washington Post White House reporter Ann Kornbluth, Ezra Klein, who blogs on domestic and healthcare policy and is probably the best sourced and best educated, quite honestly, on Wyden's Choice Amendment. Matt, I'm going to begin with you, though. The tyranny of bad ideas. Why on earth would politicians elected by Americans and paid by Americans out of their tax dollars choose not even to bother voting on allowing an updating of something as absurd and outdated as the current healthcare system?
Well, the big mystery is why business is trying to cling to keeping its central role in the American welfare state. Because what Wyden's proposal basically would let folks do is, if there weren't certain choices offered by the employers, it would have let the employer just essentially give the cash to the employee that they would have spent on them and let that employee use it as a voucher in these new insurance exchanges, which are going to have dozens and dozens of insurance choices. And, you know, why we should say that the 175 million people who now get their health care from employers but are getting shrinking coverage, and business themselves don't really want to be in this business anymore, shouldn't have this choice and be able to use these exchanges is kind of a mystery. But it's sort of emblematic of the dead ideas that both big business and big labor are in the grip of.
Yeah, I mean, and it's almost not even a mystery for that reason, Ezra. Clearly, big labor and big business have control of our Congress and are going to perpetuate a broken system at the expense of everybody else until the American people come up with a way to start funneling their own money to bribe these politicians to work for them instead.
Baucus is saying, you know, business and labor, I've never seen anyone so opposed. And he gives a little chuckle. He gives us a little small chuckle just for a second and says, there's got to be some wisdom in that. And I thought that was a really telling instance in how this debate has gone forward. These are two groups who are very invested here in the status quo system, right? They both derive a lot of power from it. Employers get a lot of power over their employees because they control their health care. Unions get a lot of bargaining power with their employees because they say, we're going to be the ones to get you health care. And they say, keep it the way it is, right? Keep it this way.
Keep us in power.
And Baucus sort of chuckles and says, there's got to be some wisdom in it. And yes, there is for them. But that isn't the only question.
Yeah. If you were to look, Matt, just walk us through, if you could, your analysis of why this is such a. I laugh because it strikes me it's funny to me. I'm sorry, but why is this idea so dead?
Business, especially led by the human resource chiefs who run their big benefits empires at these companies, like to have the big benefits empire that they run. And if you gave people the chance, essentially a voucher, that they could use to pick from among competing insurance options at the exchange, we'd move beyond being locked into the employer as our sole source of health care for most of us. And we're the only country in the world, the only wealthy nation, that ties health insurance to your job. That's bad for business. It's bad for entrepreneurship. You've got a lot of folks who don't start businesses because if they've got pre-existing conditions in their family, they can't afford to go outside the group employment setting. So Wyden's idea was let Americans have access to group coverage outside the job setting. That was the big breakthrough idea that sadly big business and it turns out the big unions are resisting.
Meanwhile, unemployment's at a 26-year record as the politicians again support these busted systems. Take a listen to Chairman Baucus and then Senator Wyden's reaction from last night.
And if we were to, in America, do this all over again, start from scratch, that we may not have an employer-based system today, if we were to start all over again from scratch. Rather, every country finally realized if they're going to enact health care reform that works, they have to build upon their country's systems and organization and make it work a lot better. It's kind of akin to the devil you know versus the devil you don't know.
Members of this committee on both sides of the aisle understand the importance of choice and competition. Choice is what generates competition, and competition holds down healthcare costs for our people. But yet we have stripped this bill, colleagues, of choice and competition. A typical American who works for a mid-sized company, if they are getting hammered by their insurer, they are stuck.